Open your Bibles to 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verse 1. I'll be there in a second. That's 2 Chronicles in the Old Testament, chapter 32, verse 1. I've preached through these verses before in the past. I want to take a second look at them. See what else we can learn from these passages. I've been going through some struggles as of late, and I'm sure many of you have too. If you haven't, be a disciple of Jesus Christ for a while. I'm sure that's going to happen to you too. Life is full of difficulties. Life is full of problems. Life is full of struggles. Some of those struggles and problems are bigger than others. Some are very minor, but they're still struggles, to major tragedies. But I've been preaching now for almost 8 years about the one thing that can overcome them all. That is faith in God, faith in Jesus Christ, trust in God, and trust in Jesus Christ. I've been saying that from the very first day when this ministry opens its doors. That being said, I've also reminded you, and I need to remind myself daily, that we have an enemy. And we have to keep that in mind daily, that we have an enemy. An enemy, Satan, and his evil forces that are always seeking opportunities to destroy us, to press us down, to defeat us. We cannot, we must not ever forget that there's a spiritual battle, a spiritual war. We're in warfare in the unseen world, with the unseen world, daily. Like I said, some days not as much as others, but it's daily. Satan and his minions uses these struggles, these difficulties, these problems, trials of our lives to destroy us. He jumps at every opportunity he can, him and his minions, to destroy us. This is nothing new to you that are seasoned Christians. God, on the other hand, seeks to develop us with these struggles, with these trials, with these difficulties, with our problems. One tries to develop us, and the other, Satan, tries to destroy us. Nothing new. I preached that during the spiritual warfare series over and over. And if you're a disciple of Jesus Christ, I got news for you. You cannot avoid the trials. You cannot avoid these struggles and the problems. However, you can face all of them and thwart Satan's plan to defeat you, defeat me, if we keep our trust and faith in God the Father and his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. That's why I wanted to look at this story again. I have a tendency of, when I'm facing struggles, to go back to God's Word and look at the heroes of faith, people that have gone through it, to see their patterns and how they dealt with their problems, their struggles, their difficulties, their trials, and what got them through. Here in this story, Sennacherib threatens Jerusalem, and we can see here in the story how Hezekiah deals with it. It's a wonderful story. Most leaders, or pretending leaders, if they were faced with what Hezekiah was faced and the people in the city, they would react with fear and frustration, anxiety, you name it all. You can make your own list. Hezekiah chose to face his difficulty, his dilemma here, we'll read here in a few moments, that we find in chapter 32, by putting his faith and trust in God. If you get anything from this message, get that. That's the most important thing you can remember from this message. There's always going to be problems if you're a disciple of Jesus Christ. And the enemy knows that. You're not just a mouther of it, a professor of it, but the real deal. The problems that he creates are going to be bigger than anything or any of your abilities to handle them on your own. Oh, we try as stupid Christians, stupid people really. We try to handle our struggles and our problems all on our own and leaving God out of it. We got this one, Lord, and we usually fall on our face. You'll see in this story what Hezekiah and people faced. And it should be our cue how we should rely on God the way they did. You're going to see unwavering faith in this story that produced a wonderful victory. You'll see it over and over in God's Word that God honors always steadfastness if you trust and faith in Him. Not just in this story tonight, but in many stories you can read through the Old Testament and even the New, what the disciples went through. God always honors steadfast faith and trust in Him. Now let's get to the story. Verse 1. After these things and the establishment thereof, Sennacherib king of Assyria came and entered into Judah, the southern part of the land of Israel, and encamped against the fenced cities, and thought to win them for himself. Literally thought to break them up for themselves. So write this down. Number 1. Here you have the threat. Right outside your walls in your cities. Your fenced cities. And Sennacherib wants to break them apart and overtake you. And his track record, if you know biblical history, and if you didn't trust in God, you'd be shaking in your boots. because Sennacherib was very successful prior to this event in going in other places, not just in Israel, and doing just that. So what did Hezekiah do? When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib was come and that he was purposed to fight against Jerusalem, or his face was to war against Jerusalem, he took counsel with his princes and his mighty men to stop the waters of the fountains which were without the city, and they did help him. So there was gathered much people together, who stopped all the fountains in the brook that ran through the midst of the land, saying, what should the kings of Assyria come and find much water? So what did Hezekiah do? Did he go whimper in some corner and saying, why me? Why this city? Why Judah? You know how many times I've been advised, well, you need to stop and pray and do nothing. Oh, really? I want you to really give me chapter and verse for that. In context, by the way. Are you saying prayer has no place? Oh, it does. And in fact, when I'm done with this, it's going to have a place among 6 things that we can learn from this story of what Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem faced in that time. Oh, just go gather in somewhere inside the city walls and have a prayer meeting. And just stay there and pray until God brings the deliverance. And like I said, most of you might say, well, he doesn't believe in prayer. I'm going to show you the place for it in this story. Because there is a place for it, not just in the story, but in everyday lives. Including mine and yours, whatever we struggle with, whatever we have difficulties with, whatever problems or trials come our way. But it's amazing how, if you look closely in the scriptures in this story, what did Hezekiah do? The King Hezekiah do? He didn't waste no time. He speedily made preparations. That's how I read it in the scriptures here. He did not take a passive stance. Think about it. He responded to the threat. I'm not making this up. You can read it for yourself. We just read through those few verses. He responded to the threat by doing what he knew he could logically do. He didn't even have to pray about it. These are the things that he could do. Now, it would not be enough to win the victory. Sorry, the arm of the flesh, in this case, will not win the victory. But what he can do logically, whatever part he can do that didn't take any faith, just common sense, that's what he did. And that's what it says here. He took counsel with his princes and his mighty men to stop the waters of the fountains which were without the city. And they did help him. Because it made sense. Why should we provide the water for Sennacherib's army that's outside the city? Let them stay on the other side. Let our enemy die of thirst if need be. Why should we provide them with water? Those who seek to destroy us. Those who are controlled by the unseen enemy too. So there was gathered much people together, who stopped all the fountains and the brook that ran through the midst of the land, saying, Why should the kings of Assyria come and find much water? So what did Hezekiah do? He made preparations. And write that down. First, there was a threat. And after the threat, he made preparations. What he can do in his own strength, it wouldn't be enough. And as you read the story, he knows his own strength and the people's strength could not provide enough strength. There had to be divine intervention, which we'll see but when we move on through these verses. Too many Christians, as soon as something hits them, they want to have a prayer meeting. Take a hint from this story. First came the threat, and then what Hezekiah could do, using common sense and logic, he prepared. He prepared. I think that's what anybody should do when trouble becomes imminent. Be prepared. That's not enough. What you could do in the flesh. But don't be like a lump on a log. When you know better, there's things that you can do. By the way, the Bible backs up this kind of thinking, not just in this story. Proverbs 22:3. A prudent man foreseeth the evil. It said, and hideth himself. That's not a good translation. Makes ready himself. If you really think about it, what Hezekiah was doing here in these verses, he became determined not to give the enemy, Sennacherib and his army, any unnecessary advantages. That's why he stopped the water from flowing outside the city. If you remember in the spiritual warfare series, I said several times, be careful. Not to give Satan, our foe, any unnecessary advantages over us. Turn to 2 Corinthians. I was going to go there, but I'm just going to go there. Keep your finger or your marker on this chapter in 2 Chronicles, but I want to go to 2 Corinthians. It's not just an Old Testament story. We are forewarned in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 10. Now, the context here is about forgiveness. Forgiveness is the topic, or the category. But you can apply this in other topics and categories of your life, not just about forgiveness. And what does it say? Leading up to this verse, verse 11, in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, lest Satan, who? Yeah, that unseen guy. The Diablo, the accuser, the destroyer, lest Satan should get an advantage of us. For we are not ignorant of his devices, literally his evil purposes. We might not be ignorant of those evil purposes, but we seem to forget what they are, those tactics, those strategies that he uses to bring us down, or try to bring us down. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us. If you really think about it, that's what Hezekiah was doing in the physical scene world. He didn't want the enemy to get an advantage, any unnecessary advantage, so he stopped the waters flowing outside the city. And believe me or not, you have an army, it needs water. Not just for the human beings that were part of that army, but for the livestock. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his evil purposes. Hezekiah knew what Sennacherib wanted. He wanted to break these fenced cities apart, destroy them, take them into captivity, kill them. Satan wants to keep you in captivity. And he'll use your struggles, your trials, your problems, your difficulties to try to bring you down. But I say tonight, we are not ignorant of his evil purposes. So let's not give him any unnecessary advantages. And that's a whole other message or two on its own, which I don't have time to preach tonight. Only you know what those unnecessary advantages are you can give over to Satan. I'm not living in your life. You're not living in mine. I know in a personal level the unnecessary advantages I give to him, which after the fact, it literally ticks me off. Because I was not ignorant of it, but I was blindsided when I should have known better. Now, if you're a newbie Christian, might not be at that place yet. Stick around. Be a disciple of Jesus Christ for a while. I guarantee you, Satan will try to get an advantage over you, but don't let him. Become knowledgeable of God's word so you know what his evil purposes are. That's the only point I want to make. Now, go back to 2 Chronicles, chapter 32. Let's continue. Verse 5. Also he strengthened himself and built up the wall that was broken, and raised it up to the towers and another wall without, and repaired Millo in the city of David, and made darts and shields in abundance. Back to that preparation again. Made darts, or swords or weapons, and shields in abundance. He strengthened the walls. Flip that over to the spiritual world that operates. We can, that's not the right way of saying it. We must strengthen our spiritual walls daily. How? You might say. I've said it over and over. It should be second nature to you by now. How do we strengthen our spiritual walls? They were strengthening physical walls. But when Satan attacks, how do you strengthen your spiritual walls? Go to Ephesians 6, verse 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. The whole armor of God is spoken there in Ephesians 6, 10 through 18. Part of strategizing for war, and I know a lot of Christians don't like to think about it this way, but this is exactly what it is in the unseen world that we battle against every day. Remember what Ephesians 6 said? We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against all kinds of evil wickedness. And it gives you a list there in that verse. Things that you don't see. But it's as real as the things that you can see. So what we find here in this story, he strategized for war. He strategized for war. That's part of the preparation still in the story. Now, you read in 2 Chronicles 32:6, and he set captains of war over the people. and gathered them together to him in the street of the gate of the city, and spake comfortably to them, saying. Now I'll come back to what he said, but I want to jump across to verse 9, 10, and 11. After this, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sent his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish and all his power with him, unto Hezekiah king of Judah, and unto all Judah that were at Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith Sennacherib, king of Assyria, Whereon do you trust, that you abide in the siege in Jerusalem? Doeth not Hezekiah persuade you to give over yourselves to die by famine and by thirst, saying, The Lord of God shall deliver us out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Verse 12, Hath not the same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, Ye shall worship before one altar and burn incense upon it? Now, looking at this verse, or verses 9, 10, 11, and 12, you can see what's very apparent here. What the enemy was trying to do. And you could apply this in a personal level too, my friend. The enemy, Sennacherib here, was trying to, or he was causing the people, not even trying, he was trying to cause the people to doubt. To doubt Hezekiah, the leadership, but also not just Hezekiah, but to doubt God's ability to deliver them from Sennacherib's hand. When you really think about it, probably the most deadly weapon Satan has is doubt. And I think he uses it very effectively. He knows if he can get anyone, including people in this story, or you or myself, to doubt God, to doubt Jesus Christ, then he's won the battle and we have lost the battle. We have lost. That's why I think it's one of the most effective weapons, and that's why it's so deadly, that Satan uses. You look at verse 12. He knows, I didn't read this part of the history of King Hezekiah, but he knows, if you look at verse 12, that Hezekiah instituted religious reforms in Jerusalem. How? By destroying the idols, the false idols of his fathers. So what does Sennacherib try to do? He tries to cause dissent that possibly he was thinking that remained in the Jews in Jerusalem. To double think, maybe I shouldn't have destroyed those altars, those false idols. Look, we went back to worshiping Jehovah, and look at what it got us into. We're about to be annihilated. We're about to be wiped off the map for following Jehovah. You really think about it. Now, I don't believe Sennacherib came up with all this on his own. I think he was demon-possessed to say the things that he did say. It was trying to cause dissent. There's no other way you can think about that. Because outside of doubt, he loves to cause division, which is another deadly weapon that Satan uses. That's part of his arsenal. Doubt and division. You really think about it, he uses that military strategy. Sennacherib was using it here. Satan definitely uses it. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. If he could accomplish that, the city would have been lost. If he accomplished that in our lives, he's very effective in his tactics, especially among Christians. Christians need to unite for battle, not divide. Too much division now. And one of the problems is because there's so many doctrines out there and false teachings. Satan's been successful in that arena. Not with all, but with most. He goes on to boast about the conquests of other lands that he'd conquered. Reading on in verse 13. Know ye not what I and my fathers have done unto all the people of the land? Were the gods and the nations of those lands in any ways able to deliver their lands out of my hand? Resistance is futile, in other words. That's exactly what Satan wants us to believe. Why resist? Don't you know I'm going to defeat you? He wants us to give up the fight. Give up the battle before the battle's even begun. Let's continue reading, because we're running out of time. Now therefore let not Hezekiah deceive you. He's still trying to put doubt and still try to divide the Jews. Now therefore let not Hezekiah deceive you, nor persuade you on this matter. Neither you believe him, for no God of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver his people out of my hand. Well, that guy was really full of himself. For no God of any nation, that means you too, Jerusalem, Judah, was able to deliver his people out of my hand and out of the hand of my fathers. How much less shall your God deliver you out of my hand? And his servant spake yet more against the Lord God and against his servant Hezekiah. The only problem with this story about Sennacherib and his big mouths and his servants' big mouths that were trying to convince the people that resistance was not possible is the gods of those other nations were no God. They were false gods. They were not real. They were made up by Satan in the first place, way before this story, this event ever happened. They were not real. So in a sense, he's right. Sennacherib, no other God of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver his people, because there was no such God that was real that could deliver them, that could watch over them. They were believing in a false system and a false God. And with that, he tries to minimize God to these people, the God they were worshiping at this time because of religious reforms that Hezekiah put in place, the true God, Jehovah. He's saying, your God will stand just as, well, your God will not stand, just like all the other gods. Period. Period. Wouldn't you just like to smack him in the mouth? Now, you might be saying to yourself, as you read through this story, through these verses, now, nobody's really listening to this guy, are they? No one inside Jerusalem, at least. They're not listening to him. They're not going to believe it. Listen, folks. It becomes easy if you are ignorant of his devices to listen to the unseen evil in the midst of any crisis. Don't think you're immune. What he's doing here is ridiculing God for not caring about supposedly his people. And that's what he tries to do with us. Oh, God's not listening to you on this particular problem that you're having, or this difficulty you're going through, or this struggle that you might not make it in your own mindset. Why? Because God's not caring about you. And that's why I wanted to read all this before I go back to verse 7 and 6. Well, 7. We'll just stay with 7. What does verse 7 say? And write this down as number 3. Trust by being strong and courageous. We first saw the threat. Second, we saw the preparation. Then we saw more threats and mocking, ridiculing, but we just keep that in the category of threat still. Now we're going to see trust. Put your trust and faith in God. Be strong and not afraid. Let's read it. Let's read it. Starting with verse 7. Be strong and courageous. Be not afraid, nor dismay, or terrified, or crushed, or broken. You can write that down there in the margins. Be strong and courageous. Be not afraid, nor crushed, or broken, or terrified. For the king of Assyria, nor for all the multitude that is with him, for there be more with us than with him. Not that they had more people in that city that were soldiers that could fight the battle in the open if it came to that. No, he's talking about the unseen. The unseen spiritual world. For there be more with us than with him. What a statement of faith. What a statement of faith. And we're going to see that to be turned out to be right on here in a few moments. With him is an arm of the flesh. But with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. And the people rested themselves upon those words. Actually, leaned and were steadfast is a better translation. Upon the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. Remember that. I need to remind myself that almost daily these days. With him, and not just the seen, visible tools of Satan, but the unseen that are warring in the unseen world. With him is the arm of the flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. Claim that as your promise tonight. To help us and to fight our battles. And then the people, then we should rest also. No, we should lean and be steadfast upon the words. Not here of Hezekiah, king of Judah, but even though he spoke it, I believe he was directed by God to deliver that speech by the Holy Spirit. See, Hezekiah in these verses wanted to get his people thinking in the lines of faith. that God would go before them in the times of trouble which they were facing at that moment. And it's just going to get worse, because up to that point, they only received threats. But then those threats turn into or more vicious verbal communication, which would bring, if it was successful, doubt, confusion, and so forth. Hezekiah comforted his people. Let God's word in this story comfort you tonight, and myself also. The only thing that the flesh can rely on in the battle, in this case, the king of Assyria, was human strength. But here in this story, Judah relied on divine strength. Unfortunately, it takes much of a Christian's life to learn that God can really be trusted. I want you to remember that. Yes, Hezekiah did up to this point the things that he could do to prepare, which didn't have to be used at all, by the way. Any of the weapons that he was putting together, making ready for the battle, the walls that were built, even the water, which he was successful from flowing out of the city. Those are all things that he can do, that logically you can do with your own strength. But he knew it was not enough. He knew, but with us is the Lord God to help us and to fight our battles. And to fight our battles. Who's fighting those battles? The Lord God. He wants to know he has a faithful participant on this end. Not just one who goes in a corner and cries all day and saying, poor me, why me? Okay, Lord, I'll do what I can to make ready for the battle. Because I know you're going to go fight for us and you're going to win. Now, I'm getting ahead of this story. Now, let's jump to Chronicles. I kind of divided this story differently today. 2 Chronicles 2, verse 20. So far we have the threat, we have the preparation. Then in this spiritual sense, what they had to do is, okay, trust in God by being strong, courageous, and not afraid nor dismayed. Now, that's 1, 2, 3, right? Let's move on to the fourth. The story continues. And for this cause, Hezekiah the king and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amos prayed and cried to heaven. Now why? Now let's back up. Because after verse 15, where Sennacherib is declaring that no God of any nation could come up against him and be successful and be victorious. And not only that, his servant spake more against the Lord God and his servant Hezekiah. Verse 17 says, he wrote also letters to rail of the Lord of God of Israel, and to speak against him, saying, as the gods of the nations of other lands have not delivered their people out of my hand, so shall the God of Hezekiah deliver his people out of my hand. Then they cried with a loud voice in the Jews' speech unto the people of Jerusalem that were on the wall, to affright them and to trouble them, that they might take the city. And they spake against the God of Jerusalem as against the gods of the people of the earth, which were the work of the hands of man. So what did Hezekiah do? And that's when we get to verse 20 now. After doing what he can do, he went and sought God in prayer. Let's read it now in verse 20. And for this cause Hezekiah the king and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amos prayed and cried to heaven. So when they received the threatening letters, they went to pray. So now, right, that's number 4. You have threats, you have the preparation, you had the comfort of Hezekiah's speech, saying you have to trust in God, be strong and courageous, not afraid, not broken. Some more threats came. Now by letter form, he said, I've done all I can do. Let's pray. And he got Isaiah, the son of Amos, and they prayed and cried to heaven. Just in case you thought earlier that there's no room for prayer. Oh, there's a place for prayer. And the Lord, look how this prayer was answered. And the Lord sent an angel, which cut off all the mighty men of valor. And the leaders and captains in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned with shame of face to his own land, and when he was come into his own house of his God, they that came forth of his own bowels, his sons, slew him there with a sword. Thus the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all other, and guided them on every side. Now, if you go to the 37th chapter of Isaiah, you get a little bit more insight into this story. Prior to the death by his own murderous sons, the death of Sennacherib, that is, his armies here suffered a severe defeat in the tune of about 185,000 people, all killed in one night, that were a part of Sennacherib's army by the death angel that God had sent through their camp. Think about it. So write down. You have the threat, the preparation, the trust factor. Now you have the prayer, followed by victory. Followed by victory. Now, wasn't Sennacherib that boasted about here in the scriptures how powerful he was? That he could get victory over any god, including the God of Judah? And how the God of Judah wasn't powerful enough to protect them? Well, it turned out that whatever God Sennacherib chose to worship, if he did, was not powerful enough to even protect him against his own murderous sons. How ironic, isn't it? What's my point? No matter what your struggle, no matter what your difficulty, no matter what your problem or trial, there is victory in Christ Jesus. See, he has a track record of never losing. Never losing. The moral of the story, I guess, if you want to call it that, is Jesus always wins. He's going to win. So whatever I'm facing tonight, tomorrow, this next week, next month, I know the final outcome. Jesus wins. Satan loses. But there's one more other thing here in this story that stuck out when I was reading through it again. We have threat. Hopefully you've been writing these down. The threat came. Hezekiah prepared using common sense and logic. These are a pattern of things that we should implement in our own lives when the struggles and attacks come from Satan. Obviously, you see the threat. Start preparing what you can do, knowing that's not going to be enough. You need divine intervention. Start trusting by being strong and courageous. Can't say that enough. Nor afraid or dismayed. Keep that prayer connection going. Do what Hezekiah and Isaiah did. They prayed and cried to heaven. Then, after that prayer, expect the victory. But there's one other thing tonight. Let's read it in verse 23. And many brought gifts unto the Lord to Jerusalem, and presents to Hezekiah, king of Judah. Literally precious things to Hezekiah, king of Judah, so that he was magnified in the sight of all nations from thenceforth. He was magnified in the sight of all nations from thenceforth. Yes, the people were miraculously spared. But then Hezekiah became magnified. God showed him off. If you really think about it, when we go through our struggles, our difficulties, our trials, our problems, our struggles, and when we get the victory, because Christ always wins, He magnifies us. Sure, He gets the glory and He's magnified, but He magnifies us also in the sight of all. In the sight of all, you're walking, living testimonies of God's power. And He will magnify you once the victory is obtained in the sight of all as a servant of His, as a servant of God, His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. And what He can do when we faith and trust in Him. Period. So hopefully you wrote these 6 things down. I'll repeat them once again. To look at as a pattern that you will go through if you stay connected with Him. Yes, the threats will come, whatever those threats are in your life. Yes, you see it in God's Word. Don't go in a corner and just cry your eyes out and say, oh no, what's going to happen now? Start preparing using common sense and logic and the things that you can do, knowing that you still need divine intervention. And how are you going to get that divine intervention? Number 3, by trusting Him, being strong and courageous. Not afraid, nor dismayed, not broken or terrified. 4, stay connected. It's important. You need to stay connected to the divine with faith and prayer. 4th is the prayer. 5th, victory's coming. Jesus always wins. And 6th, when that happens, He's going to magnify you. He'll magnify me in the sight of all the doubters, the naysayers, because we're a servant of Him, of God the Father and His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and what He can do through us when we faith and trust in Him. 6 important elements in this pattern that I saw here in this story. And I could go in different areas of God's Word. You can see the same pattern over and over again. Over and over again. I make it a habit of studying these people and how they reacted to the life struggles the life struggles that they faced. And obviously, God was pleased in them because he gave them the victory. Hezekiah had some problems after that, but up to that point, not only reformed Judah again, and only serving one God, Jehovah, but he also was a living testimony. And the people that he served under were convinced that Sennacherib, all he had is the arm of the flesh. But what they had was the Lord their God. And that's what we have tonight too. Nothing's changed. To help us and to fight our battles. As far as my health-related problems, that's the Lord's problem. He has to fight this battle. I can do what I can do by going to the medical professions. But they have not been very successful, by the way. And I've had to learn to lean more and more on God than ever before in my life. Because in this case, money does not buy a cure. The arm of the flesh ain't going to cut it. They can help, but until divine intervention comes, that's why I ask you to keep on praying. The victory is not going to come. You can apply that to anything in your life, not just health-related issues, but anything. And when it's all over, he'll magnify you in the sight of all. He'll magnify me in the sight of all. You really believe that? I have every trust, every bone in my body, trust and faith in that promise. That promise. I want to end with a poem tonight. I usually don't do this. It's an author that's not known. It's an unknown author, actually. Nobody knows who wrote it. Trust him when dark doubts assail thee. Trust him when thy strength is small. Trust him when to simply trust him seems the hardest thing of all. I want to read that again. Trust him when dark doubts assail thee. Trust him when thy strength is small. Trust him when to simply trust him seems the hardest thing of all. Trust him, he is ever faithful. Trust him, for his will is best. Trust him, for the heart of Jesus is the only place of rest. And the reason why it's the only place of rest is because Jesus always wins. I have news for Satan and his minions. You're the losers. Jesus has already won this battle for my soul, and he knows my needs, and he'll bring the victory in due time. I trust and faith in that. And that's why, in case you don't think I believe in prayer, I do, in its right place. That's why I ask you to continue to pray for me, and I want your prayer requests. I want to be praying for you. We don't need to be divided. We need to unite. Satan tries to divide and conquer. He's the master strategy creator of divide and conquer mentality. Let's unite in faith and trust in God, because he is the one that fights our battles, and it's he that will help us. We just have to lean and steadfast upon his words. His words. He will see us through. And I want to repeat it as the very last thing I say for this message tonight, so Satan hears it loud and clear. Loud and clear. Jesus always wins. Jesus always wins. Remember that when you face your life struggles. Jesus always wins. Play the song.